As a fan of the old game TIE Fighter, I have to say Squadrons takes a lot of steps forward, but also quite a few steps back.
Hey J Review.
Welcome back to another Hey G review. Today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Squadrons, a game that was not on my radar until June, which is I'm pretty sure when it was announced. And when it dropped, it was one of those games where I was on the fence of getting. Thanks to a generous donor and viewer of the channel, I was able to pick it up. And I have to say, this game, the initial impression, I want to say blew me away with the graphics, because the graphics, it's really a step up from a game that is 20 years old. So the last time we got a Star Wars dogfighting in cockpit flight simulator, for lack of a better word, was in the 90s, and I played so many of these. So we had the X-Wing game, the TIE Fighter game, and then X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter, which focused a little bit more on the multiplayer aspect. I spent a lot of time in TIE Fighter and a little bit of time in X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter. I much prefer TIE Fighter because of the single-player campaign and the story there. So I'm going to be comparing Star Wars Squadrons a lot to the TIE Fighter experience that I grew up with and love to this day. Now, I did try to get back into those old games recently, as far as a year ago. I have to say they did not age that well, so keep in mind I might have a lot of nostalgia goggles here as I'm comparing the two. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with the story, because that is something that, to me as a Star Wars fan as a kid, there wasn't all of this Star Wars thing to dig into in the 90s and early 2000s. You had to pretty much scrounge. There wasn't just like 20 series of comic books and Disney Plus and new movies coming out left and right. So TIE Fighter really offered more Star Wars lore that was so fascinating. It took place during the original trilogy. It had Thrawn that was recently introduced from the expanded universe. So there was a lot of new stuff to be excited about here. And the missions, I believe TIE Fighter started off at the end of the Battle of Hoth, and then you were doing all these side missions as an Imperial pilot, and the more things you did in missions, the more you ranked up your grade as a pilot. And then there was also this kind of like secret side stuff where you would get like a really cool tattoo and you were part of the Emperor's order, like secret order. If you did all of these missions for the Emperor in secrecy, you would get like this really cool tattoo that would grow. That was a really cool effect. So with all that in mind, the Star Wars Squadron game story just sucks. It's not good in comparison. Without spoiling really anything, you play on both sides. So you're going to be playing as the new Republic and the remnants of the Empire. And it's a really interesting twist, because this time it's all about a New Republic super weapon that's being built. And as the Empire, you want to destroy it, which it's such a 180 from the traditional story of the Empire building something big that the rebels need to destroy. And then, of course, as the New Republic, you're basically trying to move this project along. So you're taking turns as a pilot in two different squadrons, the Imperial one and the New Republic one. And you're basically flying missions to move that story forward and bouncing back and forth. You're kind of seeing two perspectives. Maybe if it doesn't sound like it works that well, it's similar to kind of StarCraft, where you play as three different factions and you still somehow feel like you are rooting for the faction that you are playing with. Like, even though you're playing on multiple sides, when you're on that side, it's built in a way. Now, this story is nowhere near anything that Blizzard has put out in the last 20 years. It's a really cut and dry, nothing could have happened here, and the same thing, it would have been the same. So there's nothing to be excited about. The characters are so lame. I have to say right now, I don't care about any of the characters in this game. There's a few really cool cameos that you're like, huh, I know that person from X series. But otherwise, your co-pilots, so when you're on the New Republic, they're all kind of whiny, insecure, fearful characters that have no character development, no arc. You as a pilot don't have any character development, no arc. And then you have like this leader who's just has... There's two leaders on both sides that have grudges from years past. It's basically their story, and you're tagging along to see what's going on and trying to move their agenda forward. On the Imperial side, you're kind of dealing with more cocky pilots who are all about order and you know, laying out some Imperial punishment. It's so tame. It could have been so much more. Like, they had it in the original and they lost it here. So if you're going into this game for the story or for the characters, you're going to be extremely disappointed, because they both suck. All right, next up are the graphics. And as I said, maybe this is also because I don't usually play on my PC. I did get this game on my PC. I was playing it on all high settings. And when I was flying around, it was like, whoa. So the past Starfighter type games, they always, they didn't have much in space. Like you were pretty much flying in space. There was a space station here and there, sometimes a Star Destroyer. There wasn't much. Here you're seeing planets in the background. You're flying through asteroid fields. There's Starfighter debris everywhere. There's a lot of stuff to fly around and to look at, and the lighting and all that's really cool. You even have like the lighting effect in your cockpit, which at first was a little distracting for me, but you got used to it. The detail in your cockpit is crazy. So in the graphics department, like they did a fantastic job here. And this kind of touches up on the gameplay, but I love that there's so much stuff to fly around because now you can actually maneuver through like asteroids, or if you're being chased by a missile, you're going to like slingshot around an asteroid to get that missile to get off your tail. Same thing with another pilot. This game also supports VR, which is interesting because I don't really care about VR, but I did get a VR headset from a friend to try Squadrons in VR, and that was very important for me to try before I did this review. And I have to say, I don't recommend it. And it looks beautiful, mind you. You can actually like look around your ship and you can see your wings and stuff. And that experience is cool to be in the, like it's quite immersive and it feels really, really cool. But playing in VR is a whole different experience. And I have friends who love it and play only in VR. Personally, as someone who started playing on your old school flat screen and a controller, I did not enjoy VR. So let's get into the gameplay, which is pretty much your similar type of gameplay that you would expect. So you're always in a cockpit. I know some of you are always wondering, well, can you get third-party view like the old Rogue Squadron games? No, you cannot. This is very much to simulate what it's like to be a pilot in a cockpit and managing your resources and all of the power distribution in your ship to shoot things. And then the main mechanic of the game is you find something and you shoot it. It's pretty simple. Where the gameplay has more depth is you still have to manage all of your power stuff. So you can have up to 3 different things to manage, which are your speed or engine power, blaster power, and your shield power. So you have a finite amount of power, and sometimes you can like divert your engine shields to your blasters, which means your blasters recharge faster, but then you go slower. Or you can divert your energy from your engines to your shields, which means you'll go slower, but your shields will recharge faster. So you kind of get, and then there's a balance where you get all 3 balance. So for most of the time, you're pretty much playing on balance unless you're trying to get somewhere. Then you want to maybe throttle up and have more power go to your engines. Then when you're in a dogfight, you can kind of scale back your engine power and increase maybe shields if you're getting shot at a lot, or power if you're on the offensive. So that kind of management, it's very cool. And then you add in the whole, you have to maneuver, do some barrels, fly around stuff, and prioritize your targets. So all of that management, there's a lot to do. And then you can direct your wingman as well as saying like attack this or attack the guy on my back. That is where the depth of the game is, managing all of these things that are going on in real time while also managing, the battlefield, which is in full 3D, and seeing what's going on. And I have to say, it's very overwhelming at first. And if you've never played a game like this, you're going to find it very overwhelming. So add VR to that, which adds even more stuff to look at and more dimension. That's why I don't like VR, is because for me personally, when I play this game, I'm already so distracted by all the things going on. It's already quite a challenge for me to keep up with everything I need to do. Add in VR where I have to be looking around at stuff and then also look at my monitor, because if I'm looking here, I can't see what my power stuff's doing. So VR for me is not good. But if you want that full pilot experience and you really want to know how stressful it is to be in the cockpit of a TIE fighter, an X-Wing, hey, go full VR. You'll probably turn out a better pilot than I will. So the gameplay is really leagues beyond what the original games in the 90s offered. Like there's just, I wouldn't say so much more to do, but there's so much more that you can do in the maneuverable aspect, where there's just more debris and stuff to fly around with. I also love what they did with the capital ships. So in the old games, you could always kind of take down all of these turrets on a Star Destroyer, for example. And then there was like missile launchers, so you could cripple a Star Destroyer, and they kind of brought that back and expanded it on the capital ships, where you can destroy their shield generators, their targeting systems, and there's way more turbo lasers to disable. So I really like that. And then if you like focus your blasts, your fire on one aspect of the Star Destroyer, that hull is going to get destroyed, and then they tell you like, oh, there's no point in shooting that aspect anymore. Focus your fire elsewhere. So you're slowly like seeing the capital ships getting destroyed the more like onslaught you put on it. So it's really cool. And capital ships will destroy you. Like the AI is just really good. It's not, you can't joke around with this thing. You have to go in with a plan. Now, another step back. So we already said the story sucks, the characters suck. Another step back is the music. I do remember back in the 90s, even when we had just basic MIDI files, there was very like epic moments of the music where the music would just like ride, and like it would just get your blood going of like, all right, I'm going to battle. Like I'm an Imperial pilot. Let's do this. Here, the music is very Star Warsy, but it's very tame and in the background, and you're never going to be flying at one point where the music just surges and takes over you, and you're like, all right, I'm in a Star Wars film right now. I never got that experience, and I don't know how they messed that up. Star Wars music is one of the most iconic thing, and to just slap that in a game right at the start of a mission, like launch out of the docking bay and play like, you know, that song that's in Return of the Jedi when they go right into the Death Star battle, you know, dun, 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 like it just gets your heart going. None of that's there. I was just like, that's a missed opportunity. In terms of modes and what you can do, so outside of the story, you can dogfight. That's 5v5. It's pretty cool because there's basically 4 types of ships you can focus on, including a kind of like a healer class, which that was never there in the old ones that I can recall. So there's a lot of ways you can play this game depending on what you like to do. If you want to be more of a support kind of ship, you can do that, although you're going to get shot at a lot. And then we also have fleet battles, which is, I really like the concept of that, is you have the big capital ships, and then you have like 2 support frigates, and then there's the fighter wings, and it's basically a kind of a push and pull about you're just trying to be on the offensive, then sometimes you have to go on the defensive, and you have to be strategic and work with your team to really advance the cause. So I really like those modes, but I find it's quite hard to coordinate gameplay for this. When it was first announced, I was like, oh, this could really be a cool esports, and I could potentially get into this competitively. But I find it really hard for this to be an esports now that I've seen it, because as a spectator, it's hard to see what's going on in the current views. Like if I was streaming this, people have a lot of difficulties following what I'm doing. I don't even know how you would commentate on this. And as a player, it's even hard for me to know where my wingmates are and what we're focusing on. Like outside of saying, focus on the capital ship, you know, take out the shields, you can't really say, oh, there's someone on my back, take them out, because that then you have to find your wingmate, and then you have to hit a button to like select who's firing on them, and then you have to find that and then shoot it. It's just not intuitive and not easy to do. So I think this is going to end up being a very niche community. It's a solid game in terms of gameplay, but I don't see it getting that big like esports attention that I thought it would have. When you do play competitively, there's a lot of stuff, not even competitively, well, maybe it is. The more you play this game, the more little goodies like in-game currency you can get. And then you can trade that for customizables for your ship. So you can customize your ship visually. You can have like different decals and stuff, or you can unlock new types of engines, new types of blasters, so that you can really customize the ship around your playstyle. If you're very offensive and you don't care about mines, you can swap out your mines to just be like, you know, full on missiles and stuff. So there's a lot of ways to customize the different types of ships, which adds a lot of depth to how you can play. So I could play an X-Wing a certain way, you could play an X-Wing a very different way. And that really comes across when you're in battle and you come across someone else with the same ship at you, and you're like, whoa, this is different. That one's flying faster, it takes more damage. It's really interesting how they balance that. So outside of that, you know, it's a really good game for what they could have done, but with the material that they had and the legacy that they were also building off of, I feel it would have, they got the core gaming aspect of it. Like they got the heart, what I think is the hardest thing to do, they got it here. EA did it. EA Motive did it. But it's all of that extra the whole package of, you know, the story and creating that player emotion with the game that I feel is really lackluster and missing. Now that I've completed the story, I'm gonna find it quite hard to go back and play this game, just because the competitive aspect is not as addictive as I thought it would be. Unlocking things and customizing is not as rewarding as I want it to be. And the story just, I honestly can't even remember any name, and I don't want to talk to anyone else. So there's a lot of like optional missions where not missions, but optional dialogue where you can talk to people. I skipped all of it. After the first 2 missions, I'm just like, these guys are not adding any value to my life. I will not be talking to them again. So if you're looking for a really cool Star Wars flight simulator, you could, the price is pretty good. At full price, I think this was $40, which is good. If they had that full like story with really good characters and a little bit more features, the $60 would not have been a hard sell for me. But at $40, it's pretty good for what you get. If you can get at 20 or 30, I think that's like the sweet spot right now. But if you're looking for more lore because you're really like obsessed with the lore, honestly, just watch YouTube videos of what the story is, because it's not really worth playing through it if that's what you're looking for. So I'll see you all on the next HeyJ review, and until then, keep it classy.